Hello everyone and welcome to Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign, a new game that was touted as something that can topple both the Total War series and challenge some of the Paradox games in terms of grand strategy. I'm going to be giving you guys a review today, a breakdown of some of the mechanics in this game, things I like and things I don't like, and why overall I think, unfortunately, this game has kind of fallen flat. So, we are playing as the Byzantine Empire, and we started with Constantinople, Adrianople, and Thessalonica. As you can see, I've played 3.5 hours. Now, this is not actual time, this is in-game time, and a lot of that, I can tell you right now, was spent on Speed 2 and even Speed 4. So that does fly by pretty quickly. I'd say I probably spent about an hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours on this all told to get that sort of time, and that's with time moving slowly for a couple battles that I did myself, but really like only 1 or 2 in that regard. Now we hold 8 different cities, so Heraklion, we hold Athens, the first 3 that we started with, Nicaea, Bursa, and Sardis. So this is one of the problems. I haven't been playing for that long. I don't have that great advisors. I don't have anything like that. My income is still moderate, but nothing crazy. And we are the number one. We're the number 1 world power. 45-30 fame. We have eclipsed France and England, even though they start very powerful at the start date. We've pretty much pushed off the entirety of the Ottomans. They're down to a single city in Ankara, and they have very little actual military strength or allies to speak of. And we've done all of this without a single ally of our own outside of a vassal that was pretty much useless. So these guys, Morea, they got me into a war on their behalf, which I stayed in for a while. That did crank up our instability from war exhaustion, and then eventually I took Heraklion, and that's sort of the end of it. Now, the first and most apparent thing in this game is the map. I'm zoomed out as far as you can go. I'm not zooming forward, and I have to scroll this way and that and all around here just to show you guys the small amount of the world that I have control over. If we try zooming in, you can see I can get close enough to see this one lone jogger moving out toward his little church home up there, I guess. But yeah, we can get... This is our full range of motion right here. So this is zoomed out, this is zoomed in. That's all you get. There's a little bit of a pitch shift as well, but that's pretty much it. And if you want to see anything higher up, you have to go into one of these views that are basically Grand Strategic Map. But really, there's not all that much to do here. Pretty much no matter what view you have it on. I mean, yeah, it's kind of informative. For example, marriages tell you if there are marriageable men or women at each of these different families. You still have to go in and get an audience with each of these to do anything. So you can view any number of lenses, sure. Loyalty, cultures, religions. They'll tell you some stuff about what you need to do. But in order to actually engage in diplomacy, it's all down to this single... have ongoing talks with him, this single little audience button here, and then offer demand, declare war, etc., etc. The demands are, I mean, very rare you can get people to agree to these unless they already love you, in which case, what's the point? And the offers are generally things like marriages, which you can usually not get until you already have trade with them, so it's a very linear sort of diplomacy. In addition, I do want to say, I mean, let's just look at this for a second here. The cities, the way that they're managed, well, let's take a look at Adrianople. I just purchased a new building slot. You have 8 building slots total. You start with 4 unlocked, and then each new one costs an increase of 2,000. So 2,000 here, 4,000 the second I buy this. This will become 6. The second I buy that, that'll become 8. And yeah, I mean, it's not that expensive in the late game to do this. It's more of an observation of you have 8 buildings and that's it. And the actual building browser is not that expansive. There's a military, population, religion, and farming branch, and the game that I think of most when I see this game is honestly Total War Rome 2, which is never a great comparison that you want to draw. I mean, I like Rome 2, it was one of the first strategy games that I ever played, but it has its limitations, and unfortunately I think this game has even more. Even in Rome 2, there were way more different branches of buildings you can make. I mean, the temples alone, you could build a temple, and then you had various upgrades down something like 8 different paths for the Hellenic culture, around the same for Latin culture, even I think it was 6 for Egyptian, etc., etc. And they were culture specific as well. Any culture that you have in this game, they have the same basic building trees, even the same basic resource trees. There's functionally no difference other than the religion tab. If you conquer a religious building of a different religion, you can't use it. So, for example, when I conquered Sardis, there was a mosque, and we had to destroy the mosque in order to prepare our town here for the church. And the really weird thing too is, so in Rome 2, in other sort of Total War games, you have provinces, and there's a number of cities that build up a province. In this case, these cities are provinces unto themselves. So there are no other buildings or other effects that you can get into each of these. The only other features that you can make are based off of your luxury goods in the area, and those are their own challenge. So at the beginning of the game, so no two games are alike here, and that is a plus. But the thing is, the reason for that is it looks like right now the attitudes are randomly rolled within some limits, and then the resources are divvied up completely randomly. So, for example, in Constantinople, I have lodestones, I have iron ore, and I have salt. And in Adrianople, we have iron ore, marble, limestone, and rare game. Now, here's the thing. Each one of these resources is a building. So in this city, 4 of my buildings can come from unique resources, and I have very little ability to actually diversify through the rest of the building tree here. Not that there's all that much to do in the first place, but it can be very cluttered. And then if you don't have anything, like for example my first game is Scotland, where I had something like 2 resources and you're starting 3 cities, you have to conquer in order to get anything done, because what's going to happen is you're going to build, for example, a market square, and this is fine, you don't really need any resources to build these basic upgrades. You get up to artisans, and you need wool, linen, dyes, leather, fur, oils, more dyes, wool, silver, gold, amber, and there is a way to get it without direct control, but that way is through trade. And let me just show you something for right now. We're trading with Moldavia, and I can go to my trader, and I can say import goods, and you'll notice there's nothing I can import here. And the reason why is because even if your trading partners have buildings with those resources, they must have first built the resource building for you to be able to import that good. So you're reliant on the AI to build up cities around you unless you control them directly, and that's never a good assumption that you have to be stuck with. So I think it's a little bit of a clunky resource system. The city provinces aren't all that amazing either. It's just there's less control. If, for example, you had each one of these villages that right now are entirely dependent on your couple buildings here, able to do their own upgrades, you'd also expand the strategic depth of the game as well, because let's say we get attacked from the north and they come down here and they start raiding these individual buildings. Right now, I'll lose the production, and that will suck. But I don't lose the resource, I don't lose what it allows me to build. As an example, we can build soldiers and such in our barracks in Adrianople, but the barracks itself is not really represented on the map. So right now we have some mercenaries next to us, we have, it looks like a little bit of a mine here, then a quarry, and a crop farm. But in order to stop us from recruiting, there's nothing on the strategic map that can do it, and I can even recruit armies while under siege. And this is another thing I want to get to, the armies themselves. My armies have been made of 4 bowmen and 4 Varangian guards, and these are units specific to the Byzantines, but they're basically spearmen on steroids, where they have high defensive stats, but then they have more offense than your normal light spearmen. So nominally this seems good. They are much more expensive to upkeep, costing 3 grain apiece, so you can have fewer armies with them, but that really doesn't matter because your number of armies is limited to your number of marshals. And I don't mean everyone here in the top bar, I mean only the men in red. So if you want more armies, you're going to be sacrificing trading, you're going to be sacrificing diplomacy, a religious, and other sorts of opportunities there, which really doesn't make any sense. The larger an empire gets, the more capable it should become, not the less capable it should become. And right now, the more territory you have, the more armies you need to control it, the fewer options your empire is able to pursue. And while I do understand there is some historic realism to the idea of maintaining armies as expensive, that just seems weird. Like, yeah, okay, I have 8 armies as the Empire of Rome. I guess we have to fire all of our couriers and merchants, right? Like, that doesn't make any sense at all. Plus, the sheer amount of money that comes in from merchants is absurd. If we take a look here, trade is 359 of our 778. That's about half. And I do have other modifiers on that are the reason why it's that small of a percentage. So it'll start off definitely larger than that, and then just depending on what you do, it can go higher or smaller, but it's always around half of your surplus is off of, say, 2 or 3 traders and your commerce limit. So it feels constrained. And an improvement in the game, a new novel branch of a strategy thing like that should not feel more constrained than its predecessors. Now, that's not to say it's not an enjoyable game. I had a fun time doing this campaign. It was one of those where I almost think you could enjoy this while not really having to focus on it nearly as much as you do in other cases. I mean, here's an example. Let's go to one of my armies here. We're fighting against the rebels on this side, and you can see our army morale is up at 30, and theirs is down at 26. The +5 is temporary morale effects from their leader, who is randomly generated and happens to have a couple of morale improvements, but that 30 diminishes the second you cross into enemy territory. So my 30 will go down to something around 20, maybe even less, maybe slightly higher depending on the caliber of my marshal. What that means is that with similar troops, you're never going to be able to auto-resolve effectively in enemy territory. But the easiest way to do these battles, because the strategic battles themselves are so clunky, is to auto-resolve. So what does that tell me? Well, I have 3 armies. My opponents are usually going to have 2 or 3 armies at maximum, because they're doing the same sort of split that we are up here with their advisors. Just send all 3 in at one place, smash their armies, siege their town, and then move the other 2 back, heal them, and defend your territory. And it's simple, and it's easy, and that's how I conquered the Ottomans as Byzantium in the starting part of the game. They were my first conquest here, was going to Nicaea, and then Bursa, and then Sardis. So, I mean, all of this is to say, and I'm not going to drag this out too much longer, all of this is to say, I think we were promised a novel game with this. I think some creators certainly felt that it was that sort of novel game. I know there was a big ruckus about this from people like Ludi and others in the Paradox community, and, well, I don't know. I'm going to go back to doing some streams and recordings of Victoria 3, because I think there's just way more depth of mechanics there, and Paradox is still as annoying a company as they may be from time to time with just things like the DLC policy. They're still just better at making the depth in these games than it looks like Knights of Honor is able to do. And that's kind of sad, because I was really hoping there would be some fresh competition, some fresh life in the genre. But that's all I've got to say about this, so, you know, take my opinion for what it's worth, which is not all that much. I am just a tiny YouTuber with my own little opinion here. If you want to try it out, if you want to enjoy it, be my guest, and I hope you do. But otherwise, if it's a 50-50, it's not one that I can recommend. So, well, that's all we've got for today. Thank you all for hanging around, and we'll see you again real soon.